10 weeks, I've been working on this 1974 Corvette. I've LS swapped it, modified it, and today I'm finishing the last things needed to start this thing up for the first time. All right, so the next thing I want to work on here is the exhaust, and I'm actually pretty excited about this. This is going to be the nicest exhaust I've ever put on any car. I got myself a full Pypes performance exhaust kit. Let me pull it out of the box and I'll show you what I got. So this is a complete stainless steel kit, including mufflers for my particular year of Corvette. I think like a certain year range, maybe late 60s to mid 70s, something like that. And I'm gonna admit, this is actually the very first stainless steel exhaust I've ever done. I've always done like, you know, the cheaper, whatever, mild steel kits. And I'm kind of excited. The Corvette's actually gonna have a much nicer exhaust kit than my Challenger, which is kind of funny, but this kit is meant to be a complete bolt-on setup for the 74 Corvette. That is, if I would have kept like the stock small block, whatever, 350. Of course, mine is not quite stock. Obviously, the engine manifold position is gonna be a little bit different, and then the transmission is a different size. So I will have to do a little bit of modification in my particular setup. Now, I chose this kit for a very specific reason. I'm going for kind of a different sound out of this engine setup here. My last couple of builds, the Challenger, the Mustang, I went for more of like the classic, you know, choppy muscle car sort of sound with the chambered mufflers and the H-pipe crossover pipe. In my experience, that gives like a very rumbly, very like cool, you know, muscle car, old school sound. But for this Corvette, especially since I have an LS engine and the Corvette being kind of like more of a sports car, I'm going the complete opposite direction, and I'm going with an X-pipe crossover. And I went with straight through mufflers. This gives like a smoother, quieter idle with like a very raspy, like more, I don't know, more sports car, more exotic sound. And that's kind of what I was going for with this guy. Of course, you never know what it sounds like until we get this thing all put in, and I haven't even started this engine yet, but I'm thinking this is gonna sound pretty good. So actually can't wait now that I've been talking about this. I'm really stoked to see how this sounds. Let's get started. All right, here's our first kind of piece right here. And I realized that this is kind of a balance of how close I want to get it to the floor and how much this thing is going to hang down, not really much below the transmission, a little bit. And, you know, it's... you never want the transmission pan to be the lowest point of a car, so I'm okay with this hanging down a little bit lower than the transmission pan. That way the exhaust pipes will be the first thing to touch and not tear a hole in the transmission. But it looks like something about there is good. I mean, it is very close to the floor, and I know that Corvettes are notorious for getting really, really hot floorboards, so I'll have to address that. Overall, pretty darn good. And and I do plan on header wrapping this thing. So yeah, let's pull this off. Let's do some marks. We'll get this cut, and then I think we can start tack welding this guy. All right, I got this guy out of here. And one thing I learned the last time doing this, which was my first time doing this, is to weld as much as possible in the car because this stuff is gonna warp. So if I would have just tack welded this and pulled it out, it would have like wobbled. And then considering that cross member with the hole, this is particularly important on this car. Unfortunately, that means that sometimes I don't get quite the right weld because I'm welding about 3 inches from my face. And this side came out pretty darn good. This was after I dialed in the welder settings a little bit better. And one other thing I got to do here, this O2 sensor was going straight into the firewall, so I'm going to have to move that location. I'll just drill out a hole here and weld in a new bung and plug this guy off. All right, that came out actually really pretty good. Got one side done, and this thing ended up perfectly in the middle. And funny enough, we actually have a little bit of adjustability because of this, I don't know, whatever, the downpipe with the ball and socket, I think, type flange there. So I think that's perfect. I'm proud of that. Cool. All right, I'll tighten that down later when we get the full exhaust in, obviously. But for right now, I think I'm going to move on over to the left side. All right, here is the end result. We got some clamps. I'm gonna clamp it right here so that I can make sure to be able to remove the downpipes separately if I ever need to, when I need to, not if. There definitely was a good bit of modification for my particular setup, just because, of course, the LS engine kind of throws a wrench in the works there. But after a little bit of back and forth, I got it dialed in pretty good and got these pipes coming as straight as they need to be through these holes here. So next step is to build it from here back, and should be smooth sailing from here on out. All just bolt-in stuff. All right, this is looking so good. We got both mufflers in here. The stuff bolted right in. No problems, no craziness, no modification. I'm super stoked with how this came out. And I'm particularly happy that these mufflers are actually getting tucked up, inside the back of the car. One thing that I noticed, especially with cars that keep the spare tire, is you have some kind of like crazy low muffler that kind of hangs down, but these guys are nice and tucked up above the quarter panel there. Here, let's take a look. Yeah, those mufflers are gonna be completely hidden. That's super cool. In fact, let's take a look at this. We'll go just like that. Got a nice little tailpipe hanging down there. Awesome. Yeah, this is actually pretty incredible because this is not exactly an easy, run of exhaust. You kind of got to like dip below the differential, and definitely the pass through the Crossmember there is the hardest part of this thing. So it's actually pretty incredible that after I was done modifying my front thing, the rear half just bolted straight up. Anybody who's worked with these out-of-the-box bolt-up exhaust kits know there's always some sort of modification required, but this one actually seems to be pretty spot on. Cool. Let's start tightening stuff down and doing our final exact tweaks. There are enough clamps to clamp everything down because I think this is meant to be like a bolt-on kit, but I'll probably go ahead and weld some of this stuff. I am definitely going to keep a joint or two so I can easily remove the exhaust, but maybe like this part right here I'll weld up so I can take this all off as one piece. All right, this came out super good. So I'm really hoping this does something to cut down on the engine bay heat and mostly the interior heat of the car. All right, well, it's the next day, and at some point my camera died last night, but there's probably gonna be a time lapse that gets cut off, but I got this side in, and I got an exhaust hanger. So this is pretty much solid, although I am gonna put a second exhaust hanger, but for now, I'm gonna go ahead and get this side in, then, gosh, I think the exhaust will be done. All right, I got the other side installed. The exhaust is done and it looks freaking awesome. Over here we got the header wrapped front half, the custom part up here, which also came out good, and I was able to maintain quite a bit of a gap over here, which is good because, you know, I didn't want it pressed up against the floor and heating stuff up in there, but I think the ground clearance is gonna be okay. It's not really that crazy lower than like this Crossmember or even these, you know, these things here, so I'm happy with that. X-Pipe's gonna sound awesome. Everything looks good. All right, so the next thing I want to do here is get this gas pedal made or converted or whatever. Here is the original gas pedal. They both swing like this, so that's good. We got that going for us. Otherwise, they're very, very different. Yeah, the angle is just super way off here. This thing sticks way out, and this is actually pretty close to the firewall. Obviously, this gas pedal's in the way, but it's gonna hang out under there, something like that. I think this is gonna work. All right, that right there is pretty close to where I need it to be, just like that. I'm thinking I'm gonna mark it, I don't know, something like right like that. There we go, perfect. So I just need to chop this off, weld the two together, and we should be good. Okay, I'm thinking that's pretty close right there. So I am going to tack weld this thing and then see how it fits up in the car. Make sure everything's good. All right, that works pretty good. Got good pedal action there. Let's go see how it fits. Okay, well, there's absolutely no way for me to film putting that in there and actually working the pedal, but not quite right. It's supposed to go all the way down to the ground, I suppose. That's the full throw, which is actually touching down there, and this thing probably only going about to there, like halfway, so I definitely need to angle this thing up a good bit more. I think I should slide it up a little bit too. But that's why we tack weld, no big deal. Let's cut this guy off and we'll give this another try. All right, second time is a charm. I guess I'm kind of a measure once, cut twice kind of guy. This seems to be pretty good. I don't know, this is a pretty long throw for a gas pedal. I suppose I can shorten this and move it up and then move this thing down. I don't know if I want to do that though. I think we'll roll with this. I'll go ahead and finish welding this whole thing out and then we'll get this guy bolted in. All right, there we go. Gas pedal is officially mounted. I even threw a little coat of paint on there. Looking good. All right, so the very last thing I gotta do here before we do our first startup is hook up the power steering. My favorite part. Always such a headache. I've already reduced the power steering pressure. I think a few episodes back I did that. And all I got to do here is hook up the high pressure side and the low pressure side. I think this was from the Ford Explorer. That probably goes in there somewhere like that, I suppose. And here's the Corvette side. I'm gonna pull this apart and we'll see what we got to do. All right, this definitely is the Explorer, or wrong car, wrong swap. This is the GMC Yukon power steering hose. But the key here is that this kind of zigzags around there, makes for a nice little connection on the back of this guy. And then this seems to be the high pressure Corvette side, and this is pretty obviously the low pressure. So I suppose it's really only a matter of connecting this steel tube to that steel tube. I'd rather not try and get a full custom hose, and the reason is that this thing moves. And I made this mistake on the Mustang last time. You kind of want to preserve these hard lines and all that and have some movement in the soft line up here. So I don't know if that makes sense, but basically when you have a pressure valve, whatever thing that's attached to the moving, whatever this is, control arm or tie rod, whatever, you want to kind of keep it stuck. So I'm thinking if I can just connect those two somewhere right there, that might actually be perfect. I think I'll mark these and I'll take both of these guys out of here and we'll see if we can figure something out. All right, so here is the Yukon side and here is the Corvette side. And I made a couple of marks here to kind of help me with the clocking, but I'm thinking if I just join them right there, or I should say join this half onto this half right here, then that should work. The way I see it, I have a couple of options here. I can try and flare these and join them, and actually that might be nice because I'll be able to wiggle them a little bit. But I don't have a flaring tool, and I have never really been good at flaring. I don't know why, but I feel like that's going to be a place where it's going to leak. My flares just never come out right, especially with this, what I'm assuming is stainless steel. Definitely on this side, it's stainless steel, which is a very hard steel. So my other idea, which is a little bit crazy, but but bear with me here, I think I might just cut these two guys and then weld them together, probably with like a little sleeve. If I can get a piece of tubing that's maybe just a hair bigger, or I guess ideally something that will just perfectly slide over these two ends, because they do look to be very, very similar. They're probably the same. It's probably 3/8 tube. The one concern I might have, of course, is burning into the tube a little bit and reducing the overall size, but if you look at this end, it's actually really pretty small. So I just don't think there's really any concern for that. And the pressure is going to be lower anyway than it was on this side. So yeah, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work out, I can always just cut more off and figure something else out. But I'm going to slice this off here, get a clean side right here. I'm going to probably have to go to the hardware store because I dug through my box of metal scrap and I got a couple of tubes, but none of them are small enough. So we're going to weld this thing up and it's going to be free. Or I guess maybe $2 for like a little metal sleeve. All right, actually, a little change of plans. I had an idea. Instead of spending $2 on a little sleeve that I may or may not find at the hardware store, I am going to just reuse one of these little pieces from my other box of tricks, which is all my little pipe fittings and brass fittings and all that stuff. I got this guy. It is stainless steel, so I'm gonna use this, and it's a little bit too small, the hole here. I think that inside diameter is the same as this inside diameter. That's nothing a little drill bit can't fix. And this thing has like a lot of heft, so I feel like it's gonna give me a good solid surface to weld to. And I can even shave it down and make it look pretty afterwards if I cared, which I don't. So I'll probably leave it just like this, kind of cool. All right, I would say that came out pretty good. I did do a little pressure test with my mouth and a bowl of water, and did have to fix a couple of pinholes when I saw some bubbles come out, so got a little crazy over here. There we go. Otherwise, this thing actually welded up pretty smooth, and I think it's gonna work. It got a little toasty here for the rubber line, so if there's one thing I'm worried about, it's this rubber line coupling right here, but I don't know. I think it'll be okay. And $0. Awesome. All right, all set. Power steering is officially hooked up.